from a CV point of view, obviously it's a key point in terms of getting hired. I mean, Conor, would you say the CV is still like one of your pillars of getting skills across, or is it a combination of CV and LinkedIn, or are things changed in that respect?
Well, what I'd say is if you're trying to build a relationship with a recruiter, the CV is important, but not the end of the world. Like, you have a chat and you meet in person, and you do things like that. But the CV is very important when, let's say there's a job open and okay, it's a great Oracle Functions financial job, and you're talking to the hiring manager. That CV he'll spend 30 seconds looking at it and use it to make a decision. So it needs to be pristine, and that's when they make the decision. And on the phone or when you meet the manager, you can tell them all the great things about the candidates, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, sometimes decisions are just made on CVs, regardless of those factors. So that's why it needs to be really good to make sure that's there as well. And there's a few different things and tips and tricks to go through as well. And like I wouldn't really, when I get a CV, and I'd read through it quite carefully and I'd understand it, but some other recruiters would usually scan it as well, unfortunately. So sometimes you just need to make sure you have the right information in the right places to get their attention, because some people won't be as thorough, and they'll just say, okay, it doesn't have this specific module in Oracle Financials, and don't bother contacting. When in actual fact, you might have it, but it might not just be listed on the CV. So those things like that can really, you have to make sure to know kind of that kind of information to make sure you benefit yourself and kind of getting that job and that interview as well.
Yeah, and the second thing is that the style of CV, I think, can vary depending on what global location you have. So I have seen in the US particularly kind of leaning towards shorter CVs, and if you read general ads on LinkedIn, they'll say, oh, your CV should be 2 pages, but from the recruiters that I've spoken to, I think generally tend to favour a more long-form CV format, like the 4 and 5 pages. What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I way prefer the longer CVs. The reason is, let's say I have a job open, and it's, let's say it was a good example there, you had like a migration project, and the company are going to want somebody with migration project experience. And if I go to, I've got, let's say, a few candidates here, and I've got 10 CVs, and okay, I've talked to these guys, and I can read through the CV then, I'm like, okay, this guy, candidate A, did migration project here, did a migration project here. That means that she or he is going to be the best fit for that job. So when I have all that information, I can match up a little bit better. And when I call the candidate, like, oh, look, you've done these great migration projects, and there's a really cool migration job happening here, what would you think? It's just better for everybody, And the only thing I'd say about a short CV is, the short CVs usually go for the lower end jobs, and also for the, let's say, if you're a graduate, it makes sense. Like, you haven't really done much usually if you're a fresh grad. But if you've worked, let's say, 5 years plus, it should be 3 or 4 pages, and just listening through. Some people, what they do is have a short CV and a long CV. And if a recruiter says, I want your short CV, usually they're just going to send it on without kind of going through it, to be honest with you, I'd say. Yeah. Just give me the bones and I'll flip it over. They don't really take the thorough care to go through it and understand it and make it better. They just want to get it over to the people as quick as possible. So I don't think with Oracle Functionals, financials, like, they'd be more higher end jobs. And if you put a bit of time into the CV, you're going to get a better response from everyone in general.